I am no other person. I could name some names here, but I'm supposed to be at least one of three different people. I got to be one of them. I can't be myself. I've got to be one of those guys. But I'm neither one of them. I am Bob Joyce. I was born Bob Joyce, and I will die Bob Joyce.
10 years ago, a small-town minister in the heart of rural Arkansas began leading worship, and now millions of strangers online believe they've cracked a decades-old secret buried in his voice. We're talking about one of the internet's strangest obsessions right now, a humble place of worship, a preacher with piercing eyes and a vocal tone that feels like it emerged from another era entirely. And an entire corner of social media convinced this ordinary clergyman might actually be rock and roll's greatest legend, faking everything, performing gospel hymns to a quiet crowd every single Sunday. Is this pastor exactly who he claims to be, or have people uncovered something the world never expected to find? Let's unpack the truth. Meet the real person behind the mystery before the viral storm, before the theories took over. Let's establish who this man actually is. His name is Bob Joyce. He established Household of Faith ministry at a residential property in Benton, Arkansas, roughly 13 years ago, alongside his spouse, Willina. The congregation started incredibly small, fewer than a dozen believers gathering informally in a residential setting, including John and Marty Cook, a couple who attended from day one. By the mid-2010s, something changed. The growing spiritual community needed bigger spaces. Around 2014, they relocated to a rental property on Salem Road. Then came 2017, they expanded within that same building structure to accommodate closer to 40 believers. Fast forward to 2019, another relocation, this time to Salt Creek Road, featuring fellowship rooms, educational classrooms, and enough seating for roughly 100 souls. And just recently, 2025, the ministry relocated once again to its largest facility yet, with capacity for more than 250 worshipers and parking for approximately 75 automobiles. 13 years of steady growth tells the story of genuine faith, not secret identities. That's a trajectory of legitimate, transparent expansion for a grassroots congregation, not exactly the profile of someone orchestrating a decades-spanning deception. Alongside ministerial duties, Bob is also a recording artist. He regularly performs with his son Matthew, and both have cultivated substantial followings through digital platforms. Bob's personal YouTube channel features weekly worship recordings and sermons with tens of thousands of loyal subscribers. His concerts have drawn sold-out crowds. One performance at Stonebridge Farms in Alabama sold tickets so rapidly that venue operators had to issue public advisories regarding scalpers attempting black market resales. That baseline of documented, traceable activity matters. This isn't a person who materialized from thin air. There's a paper trail. Members watched the congregation expand incrementally. Each week's service got recorded and published. That consistency gets overshadowed when something else captures global attention. So how does a straightforward rural clergy member end up trapped inside one of social media's wildest celebrity theories? The viral origin story, like most contemporary internet legends, it began with video. Footage of Bob singing spirituals during worship started circulating across short-form platforms, and people's reactions in the comment sections exploded. Initial viral clips date back years, with some evidence suggesting his voice first captured attention around 2011, but the genuine explosion occurred recently when algorithmic systems began pushing clips to fresh audiences in unprecedented numbers. Viewers immediately zeroed in on the vocal characteristics, the deep, muscular baritone, the emotional phrasing, the precise manner in which he sustained specific notes before releasing them. Individuals who grew up absorbing decades of classic records began commenting that the resemblance went beyond merely close, it felt genuinely eerie, like stepping backward through time. Video compilations emerged comparing his performances against original recordings. Clips of How Great Thou Art, Love Me Tender, and Can't Help Falling in Love got positioned alongside legendary recordings, sometimes edited to isolate just the vocals, creating direct comparison content. The internet's collective response intensified. Entire accounts materialized, focused almost exclusively on promoting this hypothesis, collecting worship footage, performance recordings, and archival materials side by side. Dedicated hashtag campaigns built around the premise that rock royalty faked mortality and reinvented himself as a pastor accumulated tens of millions of collective engagements. It represents the kind of algorithmic avalanche that crashes through the digital landscape occasionally, transforming genuine, unassuming individuals into unexpected focal points of global speculation. The alleged evidence lets examine what supporters persistently cite. First, obviously, the voice itself. A naturally deep, emotionally resonant baritone filled with spiritual texture, something that resonates powerfully with listeners because rock legend himself originated from a gospel tradition before conquering popular music. That foundation matters for understanding why the comparison lands. Second, facial characteristics. Bob possesses notably pale blue irises. Comparative photographs circulating online position these features directly against archived photographs of the legendary performer, examining angles, shadows, and photographic conditions meticulously. Third, mathematical speculation about years. If the icon had survived his 1977 passing, calculations suggest he'd be significantly older than 89. He'd actually be 91 by current dates. Yet this mathematical inconsistency hasn't stopped the narrative from spreading because most viral claims emphasize sensation over precision. Then there's performance methodology. Bob doesn't simply recite religious texts monotonously from behind a podium. Instead, he brings theatrical energy, emotional depth, and interpretive choices to classic spirituals techniques admirers connect to rock royalty's own interpretations of religious material from decades past. He's even performed an American trilogy, historically associated with legendary Vegas performances, collaborating with his son. For longtime devotees who experienced those televised performances from earlier generations, witnessing Bob mid-performance hand extended upward, voice breaking with intensity on the climactic moment creates something genuinely disorienting, a temporal bridge. But here's the deeper psychological mechanism. Gospel represented the truest expression of rock legend's artistic soul. Throughout his entire recording tenure, rock royalty received precisely 3 competitive Grammy recognitions, and all 3 honored gospel productions, specifically his 1967 LP, How Great Thou Art, his 1972 release, He Touched Me, and a captured performance recording of How Great Thou Art from 1974. Bob participated in family-centered religious performances as a child, attending midnight gospel marathons. Gospel wasn't just music to him, it was where his heart always returned. Most devoted scholars consider these spiritual recordings as representing his most genuine creative expression, overshadowing his commercial rock achievements. So when listeners encounter Bob performing that identical composition, employing that identical interpretive approach, it transcends mere familiarity. It resurrects the spiritual ancestry many believers feel he carried but never fully expressed publicly. Synthesizing these components, the vocal resonance, the striking ocular features, the interpretive performance approach, the family musical partnership, and the striking parallels with spiritual material explains why clips of Bob accelerated across social platforms beyond congregational boundaries. What Bob Joyce actually states, here's what typically gets buried: Bob's actual public statements. Household of Faith's formal website contains a specific, unambiguous declaration: Bob Joyce has never represented himself as anybody other than Bob Joyce. Furthermore, a particular 2017 video frequently gets cited online as proof of hidden admissions. Some observers swear they heard him acknowledge his actual identity. The church directly addressed this. According to ministry leadership, editing manipulation occurred at approximately the 4-minute timestamp, with voice alteration creating misrepresentation of his actual statement. They directed people toward the legitimate, unmodified recording, where his actual declaration states, "I remain nobody except Bob Joyce." That's unambiguous. No cryptic hints. No negotiated arrangements with entertainment organizations. No underground compounds. No vanishing acts across decades. Simply a spiritual leader directly on camera declaring his actual identity. But there's a separate complication: massive impersonation across digital platforms. According to Household of Faith leadership, numerous fraudulent profiles exist claiming to represent Bob. These counterfeits send unsolicited messages and, disturbingly, sometimes request monetary contributions or personal data. The church has issued repeated, public notifications. Legitimate Bob Joyce does not participate in private conversations, maintains no direct message communication, does not engage in individualized email exchanges, and never solicits financial support. He maintains exactly one authenticated Facebook presence. Any alternative accounts claiming his identity, regardless of follower quantities, are fraudulent. If someone online claims to have privately communicated with Bob confirming this theory directly, that's virtually certainly an impersonator monetizing this specific phenomenon. Consider the reality: a volunteer-operated congregation with minimal institutional infrastructure must allocate precious resources just reaffirming its pastor's basic identity and warning members about fraudulent imposters. That's not indicative of someone orchestrating an elaborate, multi-decade fabrication. That's characteristic of an authentic, humble clergy member whose existence went suddenly public through algorithmic chance. Why the narrative persists? The straightforward answer: it's an irresistible narrative framework. Rock royalty faking mortality represents fundamental American mythology, rivaling cryptid folklore and maritime mysteries in cultural persistence. The narrative commenced almost instantaneously following his 1977 death and hasn't ceased for nearly 50 years. So when an authentic individual emerges whose vocal signature resembles legendary recordings, whose appearance contains recognizable parallels, and whose musical specialization overlaps directly with rock royalty's personal gospel heritage, everything slots perfectly into an already constructed mythology. Additionally, the concept possesses a melancholic beauty. Rock royalty openly embraced spiritual material throughout his entire existence. His most celebrated achievements, the awards, the accolades, the competitive recognition, originated entirely from spiritual recordings, not commercial rock productions. Consequently, for devoted admirers, imagining that rock royalty potentially abandoned celebrity pursuit in exchange for a modest Arkansas spiritual community singing psalms rather than stadium anthems touches something almost romantic. Maybe the real legend is someone finding genuine peace away from the spotlight. It's less proof of deception and more. Wouldn't spiritual salvation explain everything about a troubled soul? Once a narrative captures emotional resonance, factual corrections rarely extinguish the momentum. Footage gets recirculated repeatedly. Comment sections overflow with vocal analysis threads. Certain content creators produce recurring comparison series analyzing individual songs. The framework transcends factual assessment and becomes pure storytelling, identical to how people debate cryptid sightings or unidentified flying object footage. There's an established pattern here extending beyond rock royalty specifically. Periodically, social platforms identify ordinary individuals whose appearances or vocal characteristics echo beloved, deceased performers, then popularize theories about secret survival. Michael Jackson comparisons appeared repeatedly across prior years. Musicians resembling deceased icons from historical eras periodically generate identical speculation. This pattern communicates something profound about collective sentiment, how deeply people still grieve the original celebrity, and how desperately some believers want additional contact with that remembered artist. Rock royalty particularly sustains this phenomenon because his 1977 passing occurred unexpectedly, ending an active career. He remained powerful, touring, recording, and completely capable of selling out enormous venues immediately before passing away at merely 42 years old. That collision between extraordinary fame and premature mortality has generated continuous narratives, reported sightings, tribute performers, and still living theories for approximately 50 years. Bob Joyce simply represents the current iteration within this continuous phenomenon. Separating mythology from documented fact, what can we definitively establish through documentation? Rock royalty passed away on August 16, 1977, inside Graceland Mansion located in Memphis, Tennessee, at 42 years old. Official medical evaluation attributed mortality to cardiac complications, subsequently connected to extended prescription pharmaceutical dependency. His physical remains rest on Graceland property alongside his parents Vernon and Gladys. And his burial location remains among America's most frequently visited cultural landmarks. That narrative has remained consistent. It's been examined repeatedly, investigated thoroughly, and independently verified through countless sources for nearly 50 years. The narrative hasn't shifted. Bob Joyce, conversely, possesses an independently documented existence as a legitimate spiritual leader. He's managed Household of Faith ministry in Benton, Arkansas, across 13 years alongside Willina and alongside his son Matthew musically. His weekly worship recordings and sermons are publicly available through his personal YouTube channel, where he's cultivated following entirely independent from this theory. His church maintains documented records regarding each facility transition as congregational size expanded from initial handful to hundreds of worshipers. He possesses a traceable, documented historical record as Bob Joyce, a rural clergy member who happens to possess an extraordinary vocal gift and deep spiritual passion. What genuinely connects both individuals isn't conspiracy, hidden arrangements, or multi-decade deception. It's primarily a single element: vocal similarity. A strikingly distinctive spiritual baritone that triggers recognition among listeners because it genuinely echoes one of history's most identifiable vocal signatures. Combined with an identical musical specialization, rock royalty's most cherished genre. Factor in algorithmic distribution of brief video clips, a doctored recording clip that got misinterpreted as admission, proliferation of fraudulent accounts that manufactured illusion of authenticity, and a 50-year-old legend already embedded throughout popular consciousness. And you possess everything necessary for a narrative explosion, regardless of underlying substance. The real story might not involve mysteries whatsoever. Conclusion. The actual remarkable achievement, perhaps the legitimate conclusion, focuses elsewhere entirely. No covert operations, no concealment strategies, no definitive evidence. Just an Arkansas clergy member who constructed a spiritual community from fewer than 10 initial believers to congregations exceeding 250. A person who happened to develop a vocal presence remarkable enough to halt millions of scrolling strangers mid-feed, regardless of personal convictions regarding this theory. That foundational narrative, a small-town minister building genuine community, developing authentic spiritual leadership, and cultivating musical artistry, that narrative completely verifies itself. That's actually the more extraordinary story anyway. So here's my question for you. Does the mystery matter when the genuine accomplishment is already remarkable? Consider leaving your personal take in the comment section below. If you found this investigation compelling, please tap that like button. It genuinely helps Crime Brief reach more curious minds like yourself. Subscribe for future explorations into the narratives that captivate internet culture. Thanks for investigating this mystery with me. See you following time.